We spend the vast majority of our lives desperately engineering a frictionless existence. We construct elaborate safety nets, avoid difficult conversations, and seek out predictable routines, believing that minimizing stress is the ultimate pathway to happiness. Yet, this relentless pursuit of comfort often creates a hidden vulnerability, leaving us utterly defenseless when chaos inevitably strikes. What if the very volatility we spend our lives running from is the exact fuel required to forge an unbreakable mind? To answer this, we must turn to a paradigm shift articulated by the scholar and former options trader Nassim Nicholas Taleb. In his extensive study of probability, uncertainty, and risk, he identified a glaring gap in our vocabulary. We have a word for things that break under stress, which we call fragile. We have a word for things that withstand stress without changing, which we call resilient. But what do we call a system that actually requires volatility, shocks, and disorder to grow stronger? Taleb coined the term antifragility to describe this exact phenomenon. It is a property that goes far beyond mere resilience or robustness. While a resilient object resists shocks and stubbornly returns to its original state, an antifragile entity actively benefits from them, adapting and improving in direct proportion to the adversity it faces. A glass cup is fragile. A steel block is resilient. But a living organism, a complex economy, or the human psyche possesses the profound capacity to be antifragile. Consider the biological reality of human muscle tissue. When you subject your muscles to the intense physical stress of lifting heavy weights, you are intentionally causing micro tears in the fibers. If the body were merely resilient, it would heal those tears and return to its previous baseline. Instead, the biological system overcompensates, building denser, stronger muscle fibers to handle future stressors. The body uses the trauma of the workout as an instruction manual for growth. This biological truth mirrors a profound psychological principle recognized centuries ago by the practitioners of Stoic philosophy. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius observed that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. A small, fragile candle is easily extinguished by a gust of wind, but a roaring bonfire uses that exact same wind to multiply its destructive and creative power. The wind is the obstacle, and the fire is the antifragile mind. Central to this ancient wisdom is the concept of amor fati, a Latin phrase translating to a love of fate. It is not a passive acceptance of suffering, nor a grudging tolerance of bad luck. Rather, it is a fierce, enthusiastic embracing of adversity, viewing every setback, every heartbreak, and every failure as a necessary and beneficial component of one's personal evolution. To practice this is to demand that the universe bring its storms, knowing you will build windmills to capture their energy. Modern psychology provides empirical backing for this philosophical stance through the study of post-traumatic growth. While much of clinical literature historically focused on the debilitating effects of trauma, researchers eventually noticed a counter-trend. A significant percentage of individuals who endured severe psychological shocks did not just bounce back to their baseline, they reported a dramatically enhanced sense of personal strength, deeper relationships, and a heightened appreciation for life. The trauma acted as a catalyst for an elevated state of psychological functioning. To integrate this into your own life, you must radically alter how you perceive daily friction. Instead of viewing unexpected challenges as unfair interruptions to your perfectly planned schedule, you must begin to see them as localized training simulators. When a project collapses at work or a personal relationship hits a period of intense conflict, your immediate internal response should shift from a defensive posture of victimhood to an active posture of extraction. You must ask what specific strength this specific stressor is designed to build. You can systematically cultivate this mindset by introducing voluntary discomfort into your routine. This acts as a heuristic, a mental shortcut that trains your nervous system to decouple panic from adversity. Taking a freezing cold shower, engaging in intense cardiovascular exercise, or deliberately fasting for a short period are all controlled microdoses of physical and psychological stress. By intentionally choosing the difficult path in small matters, you inoculate yourself against the involuntary shocks of life. This practice directly combats the pervasive cognitive bias known as the status quo bias, which is our innate preference for things to remain exactly as they are. Our brains are evolutionarily wired to perceive change and uncertainty as metabolic threats, triggering anxiety to keep us safe in the familiar cave. This bias tricks us into believing that stability is the natural order of the universe, when in reality, the universe is inherently chaotic, unpredictable, and entirely indifferent to our comfort. This bias, once brought into the light of conscious awareness, loses its paralyzing grip on our decision-making. We stop interpreting the anxiety of the unknown as a stop sign and start recognizing it as a compass pointing directly toward our zone of optimal adaptation. The illusion of permanent safety shatters, replaced by the empowering realization that our only true security lies in our ability to adapt. To navigate this chaotic reality safely while maximizing growth, Taleb suggests employing the barbell strategy. In finance, this means placing the vast majority of your assets in extremely safe conservative investments, while allocating a small, highly concentrated portion to extreme high-reward risks. You entirely avoid the middle ground of moderate risk, which often carries hidden catastrophic downsides. This creates a deeply asymmetrical risk profile where your losses are strictly capped, but your potential gains are mathematically infinite. Translated to the realm of personal growth, the barbell strategy dictates how you should structure your life and career. You might maintain a highly secure, predictable day job that guarantees your basic survival and pays the bills while dedicating your evenings and weekends to a highly speculative, creative passion project. If the passion project fails, your baseline survival is entirely unaffected. But if it succeeds, the upside could fundamentally transform your entire trajectory. When applying this exact same framework to your intellectual development, the results are equally profound. Spend 80% of your reading time studying timeless, foundational texts, history, and established scientific principles that have survived the test of centuries. Then, spend the remaining 20% exposing yourself to radical, speculative, or entirely contradictory new theories. Avoid the vast, noisy middle ground of fleeting daily news and trendy self-help fads that will be entirely forgotten within a year. The distinction between mere robustness and true growth remained a guiding star throughout this process. You are no longer trying to build a fortress that simply withstands the siege. You are building an army that learns the enemy's tactics during the battle. When you isolate your downside risk through the barbell strategy, you give yourself the psychological permission to fully engage with the chaos of the upside. This structural approach naturally bleeds into emotional intelligence, fostering a state of emotional antifragility. Consider how you process criticism. A fragile ego shatters under negative feedback, lashing out in defense. A resilient ego ignores the feedback, maintaining its current shape but learning nothing. An anti-fragile ego, however, actively hunts for the grain of truth hidden within the harshest critique, using the painful sting of the insult to locate and reinforce a blind spot. It requires a profound rewiring of how we interpret failure. In an anti-fragile system, failure is not an endpoint or a judgment of permanent character. It is merely data acquisition. Every time you attempt a difficult task and fail, you are successfully discovering one specific pathway that does not work. This elimination of incorrect options mathematically increases the probability of your eventual success, meaning the failure itself is a vital mechanism of progress. To accelerate this progress, we must adopt another powerful mental model from Taleb's framework, known as via negativa, or addition by subtraction. In our modern culture, we are conditioned to believe that improvement always requires adding something new to our lives, whether it is a new habit, a new supplement, or a new productivity app. But antifragility is often best achieved by ruthlessly removing the things that make us fragile in the first place. Look closely at your daily routines and identify your hidden dependencies. Are you reliant on constant external validation to maintain your self-esteem? Are you dependent on a highly specific morning routine to feel productive, falling apart if your schedule shifts? By systematically eliminating toxic relationships, unnecessary debt, and rigid psychological dependencies, you remove the fragile points of failure. You become lighter, more maneuverable, and inherently harder to break. The ancient philosophers understood the power of via negativa intimately. Seneca, a prominent Stoic and one of the wealthiest men in the Roman Empire, would regularly dedicate several days a month to living in deliberate poverty. He would eat the cheapest food, wear rough clothing, and sleep on the hard ground. He did not do this out of guilt, but as a calculated psychological exercise to inoculate himself against the fear of losing his vast wealth. This practice of negative visualization forces the mind to confront its worst-case scenarios in a controlled environment. By vividly imagining the loss of your job, your status, or your comfort, you strip the future of its terrifying ambiguity. You realize that even if the worst were to happen, you would still possess the internal fortitude to survive and eventually thrive. The monster in the closet is always less frightening once you turn on the light and look directly at it. You can integrate this into your evening reflection. Take 5 minutes to vividly imagine losing something you currently take for granted. It could be your physical health, your current income, or a cherished relationship. Allow yourself to feel the discomfort of that imagined loss, and then systematically plan exactly how you would rebuild from zero. This destroys the fragile anxiety of anticipation and replaces it with a cold, calculated readiness. When you synthesize Taleb's modern mathematical frameworks with the ancient psychological endurance of the Stoics, you create an operating system for life that is practically invincible. You stop praying for a lighter burden and start forging broader shoulders. The volatility of the world, the economic downturns, the personal betrayals, and the unforeseen tragedies are no longer existential threats. They are the raw materials required for your self-mastery. This represents a profound, permanent shift in your core identity. You transition from being a passive victim of circumstance, constantly battered by the unpredictable waves of fate, to becoming an active alchemist. You begin to walk through the world with a quiet, dangerous confidence, knowing that no matter what the future throws at you, you will find a way to metabolize the poison and turn it into medicine. The pursuit of a perfectly safe, frictionless life is a dangerous illusion that ends in profound fragility. The universe will inevitably deliver chaos to your doorstep, regardless of how carefully you hide. So, step out of the shelter. Expose yourself to the optimal doses of stress, cap your downsides, and embrace the unpredictable nature of existence. Let the wind blow, let the obstacles fall in your path, and choose, in every moment, to be the fire.